This is the Open University.
I began to mount the stairs. I could see the light under the door of August. Dreamlike things melted before me. Towers, princes, sleeping babies. It was 11 o'clock on a January night. Cold and dark.
Hello, this is a slightly different format for the Open University. I'm actually going to walk around my flat and just sort of free associate in various places, triggered by various things. First one I'm going to talk about is the smell here, because you can't smell, this is not smell-o-vision, but there's a nice rice smell. The smell of this 3 coconut tree jasmine rice, which is cooking in my cheap Chinese slow cooker. This is the postcard of a poster I had. I had the poster and the postcard from the exhibition Heroes of the Stage, it's called. Helden der Bühne und Schönheiten der Nacht, the beauties of the night. This was held back in 2009, so it was a poster I had in my old flat in Neukölln, the other end of Neukölln, along Kreuzköln it's called. I tried to call it Neubecker when I was hyping up the area. Unfortunately, I and many other people were a little bit too successful, and that part of Neukölln has now become unaffordable. Which is another way of saying it's become nice. It's become a nice place to live, and too nice for me, who used to live there. Here are my lunch boxes. These, I was amazed to find that these are sold in my local Chinese shop, although they're Indian, I think, and they're vegetarian curries. Matar paneer, sag aloo, shahi ethi matar, Bombay pav bhaji, and Bombay paj bhaji. Yeah, twice. These are good to mix with the rice that I'm cooking up. There's a Japanese fish for, I think it's Girls' Day, or is it Boys' Day? To celebrate Boys' Day. Here's a bag full of ash. This is the lignite coal ash, which is actually really horrible. I have to wear my face mask when I'm sweeping that up. My face mask, which is... so far I'm mostly using this face mask just for ash to stay clear of the lignite coal ash, but I may well be using it at some point for COVID-19. Unfortunately, they've just locked down the whole of Lombardy, including the city of Milan, so I'm rather fearing massive lockdowns. I'm sort of in lockdown here in Berlin, in self-isolation for a couple of weeks anyway, until I go back to Paris, hoping that won't be disrupted, the return to Paris. Oh wait, I can actually see my screen here. This is my second room. It's funny, in winter I don't really use this room very much. This is my music studio room, essentially. It's got the records, the record player, and all the instruments here. So it's when I'm not recording, it's not really a place I use very much. And that's my new Apple Watch. I actually got complaints last time because I was talking too much about Apple products. Sorry. I do. It is one of my weaknesses, or one of my stupidities, really, is if I have any money to spend it on Apple products, the richest company in the world. They don't really need my money. So I went to just the other day I've been sort of thinking, should I get one of these Apple Watches, because it's got an ECG test on it. You can actually, let's see how my heart is. You can actually find out how healthy your heart is from this. So just press that. See, that's the last one I did. And sinus is the best result. That means your heart is normal. Here, if I put my finger here, it starts counting down from 30 seconds. It just takes 30 seconds to do this test. And because I was slightly worried about my heart, I'd been getting palpitations and things, and thinking I should get one of these just to keep tabs on it. But so far, it's got a perfect bill of health, so my heart is good. I also measure my blood pressure regularly, and that's perfect results anyway, although it does make me conscious of how important exercise is. Here we go, here's the result coming up. And it's sinus rhythm, which is again the best result. It says there's no sign of atrial fibrillation. Isn't that Good to know. So I guess it served its purpose. It was a nightmare to set up. I went out planning to get one of these gun type thermometers because I'd watched a documentary on Arte about China and how they're segregating different parts of the city. I mean, street by street, basically there are checkpoints at the end of every street. This is what this kind of clampdown that's happening in Milan will be like, although probably not as efficient as the Chinese clampdown. So I went out to try and buy one of those, but of course they're sold out already. The Germans have bought them all. You can buy bog standard thermometers which you stick up your ass, or under your armpit or in your mouth. Presumably not both or not all three, because that would be a horrible hygiene issue. But they didn't have any, so I then started browsing, looking at what they did have in the store health-wise to monitor your health if you're slightly paranoid about that, or hypochondriac. I don't think I am hypochondriac. Just now that I've turned 60, I'm thinking, well, gosh, what is going to be the big story of the rest of my life? And it probably is going to be health issues. I mean, it's not yet. I'm absolutely fine, but I'm a bit worried that it will become the trending topic in my personal life. So I ended up going to MediaMarkt down at the Neukölln Arkaden shopping centre and buying this thing, which is kind of cheap for 300 something euros. It wasn't the most expensive one. It's a Series 4, which is not even the latest one, but they sold it to me for some reason without a power cable, and I had to take it back and ask for a power cable. They didn't have one. They were going to send it back to Apple, but then I said, oh, screw it, I'll just buy a sort of cheap power cable in one of these dubious cell phone shops. So I went to one of those and bought one which kind of works. It took a long time to charge up the phone the first time and to set it up, and of course there's the usual kind of identitarian issues of who are you, how do we know who you really are if you're setting up Apple Pay and things like that. I kind of like the idea of just buying things with my wristwatch, but I haven't been able to set that up. So anyway, that was Friday. Was it Friday? I think it was Friday, yeah. After I'd written this email to my girlfriend saying I'm absolutely not going to buy one of these Apple phones because it's just a nag. It's for those people who want notifications every 5 seconds about everything that's going on in their lives. And I'm absolutely not one of these people. I silence and mute all notifications. So far, all I'm doing is I'm occasionally reading Twitter on it and using it to measure my perfectly healthy heart. So it's kind of unnecessary purchase, but it keeps me company also, I don't know, in my self-isolation here. None of this is even plugged in. This is my Korg Monopoly synthesizer, it makes a beautiful sound, but it's not actually plugged in at the moment. If I'm not recording, I'm really not making much music. I mean, actually doing the intro music for this week's Open University is the main thing I've done musically. And that is the main music I make these days. If I'm not recording actual songs, I'm actually just doing the sort of fatigued sound design for these fatigued videos that I make. And I'm not particularly listening to records. I mean, I'm listening on YouTube to music. I listened to John Hassel's latest album, which came out, I think, 2 years ago. It's called Listening to Pictures, I think, or Watching Movies, something like that. These are just really for show, and now that I'm thinking, I mean, in the sense that my record player is not plugged in, so I'm not particularly, even my beloved Japanese folk records, which are my treasures, I'm not listening to them really. Listen to things on YouTube. I listened to this morning to a few record PHEW, this sort of atonal pop music. It sounded like Deutsche Amerikanische Freundschaft or something, but with a Japanese girl singer. So similar thing with my books. I mean, am I reading all these? What are these? We've got Yuko Mishima's Death in Summer, short stories, and on NRF, which I really just love for the cover. Unfortunately, they've changed these. Du Monde Entier, the NRF series, has the most beautiful covers. These are the foreign authors translated into French and then issued by NRF, the Nouvelle Revue Française. and they've kept the same basic design over decades, but they've now put the red title into sans serif, which looks bad to me. It really doesn't have the beautiful 19th century music manuscript kind of look of these old covers. Is André Breton, L'Amour Fou, which I haven't read. Is Henri Michaud Plume, which I have read partially. Genius and Taste, English Literature in the 18th Century. This is German, but it's because it's got large quotes, sections of citation from literature, whole essays about genius and taste in the 18th century, so I can read it. The Roman stage, I don't know why I'm fascinated by this. I think I got this in a shop in Neukölln, which I've started going to on, it's just off Weserstrasse. There's a great antiquarian bookshop there, and I just find the conventions of a completely alien form. We have no records of what the Roman theatre was like, but I find those conventions fascinating in the same way that Japan is fascinating, that it's a completely intact alien culture that does things differently from our culture. I'm kind of an enemy of my own culture, although I'm also a product of it. I feel like we have to really reach out to other cultures because we do things so badly, we live so badly, we really don't know how to live. That's really my feeling, and that's why I like books like that present snapshots of, it may be quite highly technical, which, the names of all the different parts of the stage, some of which have come down to us and some of which we're still influenced by, but also the strangeness of the whole cosmology represented by the theatre, what actors are actually doing when they're acting, and what the gods are doing, if there are other places on the stage where the gods are sort of watching us, or in which we have to be more pious, or all these things make offerings to certain theatrical gods. Here's a colloquium on Georges Perec, who's a writer I appreciate a lot without having read a lot. This is actually quite typical for me. Oh, another thing recently I've been doing, and this is Robinson by Muriel Spark. I think I saw that in Kuala Lumpur in the bookshop called Junk, but I didn't buy it. But then I think it is. No, where does it say it's from? I think I bought it in, where did I buy that? Maybe in Myanmar. A great place for English secondhand books. And this is also from that antiquarian bookshop in Neukölln. In Luminous Wind by George Brandon, sold being number 7 of the Dolman Press Yeats Centenary Papers. So there's 2 of them, Yeats's Quest for Eden, and these are kind of Festschrift library books. Which library were they in? Institute for English Philology. They come from a bit dusty, sorry. And they're sort of beautiful editions of papers celebrating W.B. Yeats, a poet I like. Of course, we are slouching like some grim beasts towards Bethlehem just now. The what is at the end of the world, the Second Coming, yes, by Yeats's Byzantium, of course. So, and here's my MacBook Pro, which is starting to break down a little bit. As a lot of the USB-C ports are not working anymore. And what was I was just reading some. Oh yeah, I watched a Douglas Gordon interview. That was the last thing I did on this. That's about North Korea. I don't know why it's gone to that. Yeah, because Douglas Gordon, weirdly enough, I got an invitation last night, very last minute dinner invitation from the Scottish artist Douglas Gordon, who won the Turner Prize and who made a slowed down version of Psycho, for instance. That was his most famous film. He made a film about Zidane, the footballer, for instance, also. So somebody who knows him was going to dinner with him last night, and I don't know, somebody dropped out at the last minute, and I was invited along to his Kreuzberg studio, but I didn't go because I have a bit of a head cold. It's not COVID because it's a runny nose thing, which is not a symptom of COVID, coronavirus. But of course, one never knows, and one is being ultra careful at the moment with all these, any sniffles and kind of coughs and things portend possible extinction. The worrying news this morning was that people in Italy are dying from the age of 36 up. It's actually no longer just old people who are threatened by this. It seems to have mutated, or, it'd be different in Europe. It affects Asian people and European people differently. Anyway, I'm not going to give you false information. None of us really knows at this point. not going to talk about that. But yeah, I emailed this guy who's a journalist called David, who invited me and said, I'm sorry, I can't come. I'm just going to sit at home nursing my slight head cold with paracetamol, and I had a fire going, a nice open fire with, and I was watching a documentary about the general theory of relativity, Einstein, and all his theories, Stephen Hawking, that kind of development of Einstein. So I was watching that and having the fire, and just basically enjoying my self-isolation. And so what else? This is something I've quite recently got into. I have quite fixed habits now. I've gone through the whole gamut of tea drinking, from starting off from British tea like PG Tips, and then returning after going through Japanese green tea and all sorts of other teas, back to PG Tips. But occasionally I get, in winter especially, I like to mix in masala chai tea bags, and this brand is particularly good, staple-free tea bags. So the shop where I get the PG Tips, because you don't really get these here outside Britain very easily. You have to go to a particular kind of Indian grocery shop to get them. And they're great for chai. They seem to be the best tea for chai. They're strong, full-bodied kind of flavour. And then the chai adds a little bit of cardamom and what are the ingredients? Cardamom and masala chai. Indian spices selection, so that's a particularly good combination, but it does make very strong cups of tea, so it might not be terribly good for you, I don't know. All this looking with kind of goodbye eyes at this flat now, because I don't know how long I'm going to be able to stay here. We have banners out front, the building has been sold, but there are banners out front next door as well, and that's been for about 2 years, so obviously this process is fairly slow, and one doesn't really know how long it's going to be. We might be able to campaign successfully to stay for another couple of years, although it's been in theory sold. I don't know, I think the legal protections are pretty strong here. This is something I don't use anymore. It's kind of my Fujifilm X Pro 1, which kind of various parts of it have stopped working. Oh, that's the remote control for my robot vacuum cleaner, which I had to throw out because it stopped working. This is the lens for my Asahi Pentax. I bought the lens in Japan. I've talked about this in previous vlogs. Bought this in Kobe for I think $35 or something, and it was going to fit because with converter rings you can actually fit Pentax series screw lenses or Nikkor lenses to these new digital cameras, but I was also going to use it on my old Pentax Spotmatic, which was in storage here in Berlin, but unfortunately a couple of things from my storage got stolen. I had this very insecure storage in in a printing works, which was being used for artist studios by artists like Olaf Nicolai, and Theodor Georgiadze. And so when I went to pick up my stuff 2 years ago when I moved back to Berlin, I found that a couple of things were missing. I had a beautiful old Tesla tape recorder and an old East European hi-fi system to play it through. And I had a Asahi Pentax Spotmatic body, both of which have gone. They disappeared, they were stolen. So I paid the price for this very cheap storage, which is that I had to get a couple of things nicked. There was no lock, it was just all heaped up in a basement which anyone had access to. Here is Olaf Nicolai's book, Labyrinth, which is an interesting book full of thoughts about labyrinths. But the labyrinth is no empty space. On the contrary, it is a complex system of relations full of accessible and inviting ways. Leibniz coined the term relational order space to define such spaces in terms of the relationships between the things it contains, the order of coexistence produced, for instance, by Theseus and the Minotaur. Theseus and the Minotaur coexist. My favourite takeaway from that documentary about general relativity last night, by the way, was Einstein's idea that, or his famous quotation, that past, present, and future are but stubborn illusions. And when a friend of his died, I don't know what the exact quote is, but he said he wasn't too worried because his study of physics had taught him that, I think maybe that is the actual quote, the same quote, that time and space, time is simply a stubborn illusion because it's measured differently from different angles depending on your perception of it. And maybe past, present, and future are simultaneous. They're all happening at the same time. There is no, I don't know. I find that weirdly reassuring. The idea that we don't have religious faith anymore. We don't believe in heaven and hell and all the rest of it. I think if we really believed in heaven, we'd all be merrily, not quite committing suicide, but exposing ourselves to enormous risks, living dangerously, as Nietzsche put it. But because why not? You know, if heaven is really so great, and we're definitely going there. But we can't believe in all sorts of magic related to physics, to like post-Einsteinian physics, because it is such a weird world. You can pretty much take nothing for granted. What else could I show you? I could take you to the bathroom, which is the only place I haven't really showed yet. It's mysterious because it's up these steps. I like this little staircase. It's a kind of mezzanine level. Sorry, it's a bit wet. I spilled some water yesterday when I was taking my bath. This is the iPad I use only in the bath. It's an old iPad which I resuscitated. This is my Aesop soap, which is my little touch of luxury in here, although there's only cold water here, so it's not that luxurious in principle, but the Aesop soap. That's the horrible toilet with the platform. I'm not even going to show that, it's too disgusting. Here's a sort of a light I installed, which is motion sensitive. This is the really ancient 60s plumbing. And yeah. Oh no, I stood in the puddle. Oh, I've got wet feet now. How awful. So there it is. These magazines, some of these are from the previous decade, not even the previous decade, 2 decades ago. Actually, I had on display a magazine which was called The World in 2020, a special issue done by Le Monde, and I was looking for that recently because it would be really interesting to see what they thought in about 2005 the world was going to be like in 2020. God, it's turned out a lot worse. I don't think anyone would have imagined we would have such awful populist politics, a retrenchment in national borders, and a global pandemic. So kind of dystopian future arrived. That's probably a cheerful enough place to leave this particular video. So I'm going to go back to my point of origin and say farewell.
Open University.